everyone, and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. Another Monday the last Monday of June over here. Hot as hell, humid as hell, but we are here with the usual trio. I'm your host, as always, Timuchin here in Chicago. With us is the usual gang. The bottom matching the top over there is Gally with us. Gally, what's happening?
I got to tell you, it must always be like the first thing we have to do is get a weather update from Chicago, because it's either hot as hell, windy as shit, fucking freezing. There must be like a week.
Weather, damn it.
There must be a period of time where for like 1 week it's nice in Chicago, right?
No, and I can get a lot of witnesses to say otherwise over here. You would think after all these decades, not even years, I'd be used to this Midwest weather, but nope. But with us from a stormy Central Virginia's Brian Allen is with us as well, as roasting his ass off, looks like himself. And with us is Bickler underneath the bridge, nice and cool and breezy. What's happening?
Sup, dog? Just happy to be here with my Turkish friend and the new coach from AFC Richmond.
Oh, yeah, that outfit is getting it. And Chris is with us. That twice in one day is an American Scouser overdose, because he was with us this morning's show as well, commenting. So welcome all aboard. Here we go on the trivia train. This is the best part. That's what everybody tunes in for, and that's what these two guys are here for, the trivia for the week. We're going to get to a little bit about Diaz getting the number 7 jersey. So we need BJ back as fast as possible, because I'm running out of trivia over here. This week's trivia is Diaz because of it. In 47 appearances with the Liverpool jersey, how many goals and assists do you guys give Diaz, you think? Bickler, we will start with you. 47 games.
Goals and assists combined?
You can do it separately. I can do the math. I got you.
I'll go 30. I'll go 32.
For the total?
Yeah.
Damn. Okay. Well, just take the under.
So if easy for Gally.
If this were Price is Right, I would definitely say 1. But I think it's something like 3 goals, 7 assists, 3 goals, 8 assists.
Dude, I thought he was averaging way higher than that in terms of goal involvement.
It is 11 goals, actually. You'd be surprised to find out. Yeah, right? I was actually shocked. I thought it was higher than what I thought it would be. I wasn't going as low as you guys with the 3s and 4s, but I didn't expect 11. And 8 assists so far. And what's interesting, actually, is the fact that, you would think, okay, I now gave you those ratios, right? 19 for Liverpool. For Porto, he played 125 games. What would you think his number be there?
I bet it percentage-wise, it's probably less. Just because I think I don't think it was really the second half of that last season that he really became prolific, right? Didn't he? He didn't play a ton of minutes at the beginning.
This is appearances, to be honest. You might be right. I mean, 125, 40.
What was it? What did he get there? What was his total?
He had 41 goals and 19 assists. I actually thought the way Porto and Sporting and Benfica kind of dominate that league, I would have expected the numbers to be higher personally, because there's a lot of games where they blow people out, and it is overall a high scoring league. So I thought it was kind of shocking that it was about the same.
With the amount of time he missed on injury this season, I would have never honestly guessed 11 goals. And I know he scored a few right away, but if you had told me how many times did he hit the crossbar or hit the post, I probably would have said 11 or 12.
Yeah, that was a shocking thing in terms of number of goals. And Chris is right, that's almost 50%, and which is pretty darn good. And I feel like when you look at his stats, you can kind of see the drop from when he came after the injury. So I'm hoping after an off season, we kind of go back to the default settings and the initial Diaz we had, who was the best player at the time, and hit the ground running when he came in mid-season. So, but here's the question right here. So the news is that he did change to number 7. So Bickler, let's start with you. First of all, Bickler, what was your number when you played?
Dude, are you asking me that because you know it's 7?
Yes. No, actually, I had no idea.
No, it was 7 late on. Early on, it was 4, and then I moved to 7. Like I think it was like when I made varsity in high school, I went to 7 through ODP through college.
So I know Diaz is a huge admirer of yours and probably switched to 7 because of that. But I mean,
yeah, for sure. He actually called me first and asked if it was okay.
And that's a classy guy that Diaz is.
Which was nice because Suarez did the same thing. So I mean, it was nice.
Milner told him to fuck off.
Suarez probably
sure.
Wipe that number right off of you, to be honest. But so number, does that matter to you as a fan, Bickler? I mean, I didn't even know anything about the 7. That's kind of like ironic. But does it matter to you as a fan, and do you think it matters to the players themselves what number they're wearing?
So it doesn't really matter to me other than when they take a number that has belonged to a legendary player at the club. That's the only time it matters to me. Like when somebody starts touching the 8 at the club, I get a little bit weird about it. But like to me, it's like, if you're a winger and you want like when Trent went with, his 6s across the board, which is a very unconventional number for a fullback to wear that stuff doesn't bother me. But yeah, like I don't know. It's a little strange when you start touching numbers that are sort of have a significant history at the club.
How about you, Gally? First of all, what number were you?
11.
11. So
11. They gave the little guy 2 skinny little ones in the middle of his shirt. Because if you put 1 on my shirt, it looked like it was like genuinely for like a kid's jersey. So I couldn't be a single digit.
So same question to you. Do you think it matters to the players? Does it bring pressure, I guess, first of all?
Well, so I think it matters to some players clearly because they fight for these numbers. Like in pro football and pro baseball at times, you hear about people like getting traded to teams and like paying for the number, like caring so much that they'll give monetary, paying up for the number. So clearly mentally it means something. I think the pressure in football when you wear, to Paul's point, a big number at a club like 8 at Liverpool, or you wear the number 9 at just about any club, or 10 at a club that like plays with a number 10. Those things I think really do matter. And I think it matters to the players clearly. I think the pressure, it comes down to the individual player. I think the pressure never looked like Naby Keita was comfortable wearing number 8 for Liverpool because of what it meant and why he was given it and the expectations heaped upon him. So like in that case, I don't think Milner honestly gave 2 shits what number was on the back, or that he was honored to wear 7 for Liverpool, but he didn't care that Suarez wore it before him or that Kenny Dalglish did. I think he's just like, I wore 7 a lot in my career and I like this number. I want to wear it.
Yeah, see, that's odd. Do you think Keita wanted that, Bickler? I mean, I kind of find it hard to believe that somebody from Liverpool said, hey, you should get 8 as the new guy. Let's put some more pressure on you. You think he's like, I want 8? I almost would feel like somebody in club would be like, who the last 8 was, right? Kind of a thing.
Yeah, it seems like I don't know. It seems like the operating procedure would be the club would default to the player coming in as to what he wants and what's available. Like, this is what's available. This is what you want. I think it'd be weird for the club to be like, these are the numbers available. We're going to give you 8. Cool. Like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe they did. Maybe they're like, this is our big marquee midfield signing. We're going to stick an 8 on him. And this is going to be like the sort of the iconic image of the midfield going forward. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I know, like, what you're saying, Gally, because I know in some clubs, wearing, like, I know Arda Güler, for example, right now, who's being talked with, Liverpool, PSG. I'm actually hearing, like, some big Spanish clubs, also Italian clubs. The kid's name is all over the place. One of the things Fenerbahce did was give him number 10, because he was originally 25. If you watch YouTube clips of him, 25 is when he was 16 years old and stuff like that. And then he switched to number 10. And that was like club's way of saying, hey, we gave you freaking 10. This is what we think of you. Because he wasn't getting a lot of minutes initially. That was the club's way of saying, this is what you mean to us. Do you think that exists in every club, though? Like, and obviously, we didn't give Keita the 8 saying, this is how much you mean to us. You're going to get Gerrard's number, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are certain clubs that use these things. I think every player is different. I think that kid, if Fenerbahce felt like they needed to show that kid the love, and by showing him the love was by giving him a number. I mean, by all accounts, they offered McAllister 7, 8, and 10, and he took 10, claiming that he knew number 8 carried a lot of pressure because of Steven Gerrard and what he did, because he wore 8 at Boca Juniors, so it was like 8's really a big number to him. You'd think he might have wanted that, but he said, "Nah, I'll keep going with 10 because that's what I built on at Brighton." And it's probably like in his Instagram handle or something. He really doesn't want to have to remarket himself, because that's the other thing, right? Like, I honestly believe half of these idiots get the shit tattooed on them, and then they go somewhere else and they're like, shit. Now what? It's like getting some girl's name tattooed on you. There's a good chance that thing's gonna have a line through it eventually. Probably
got to change my Hotmail email address.
Exactly. Hotmail.
How about the fan side of things? I mean, do you care, for example? Do you look at a team, Bickler, and see who 7 is automatically by default?
No. I think the only time I change numbers is like if I'm playing FIFA and I feel like my striker shouldn't be wearing 64. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't like. I honestly don't really pay that much attention to it. Like, I mean, obviously it makes sense. Like you want your 4 to be your stud center back in the back. You want your 6 to be the anchor. You know, you want there's these standards across the board that we expect to see, but it doesn't bother me either way. I mean, you see all sorts of weird shit, especially in the Italian league. I feel like those guys love those high-end double-digit numbers over in the Italian league. It's like if I see that, I'm like, oh, am I watching Serie A right now? And then I flip it to MLS, and then I just turn it off. Like, so, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old enough where you wore the jersey of the position you were playing. I mean, initially, especially in high school. So I had 5. I mean, that was like you didn't get a choice. And mind you, if you were 27, they were like, why are you even on the team, bro? Because you're never going to play, kind of a thing. And then when I came for college, it became like 17 because Arnie had 5, and I was not fighting that Icelandic beast for number 5. I was like, you can have 5, bro. I'll take 17, whatever is available. But now, yeah, the players, now numbers are all over the place. That's kind of gone wayside. Do you want, Chris Strain says, hot take, Trent gets the 8. So that's going to be the next the conversation we kind of transition to. But do you care as a fan, or do you think fans give an importance, maybe a number like 8 if you're a Liverpool fan? Or do you think fans really don't care? We know Trent has 66 now. I think maybe I personally would rather see Trent at 66 all the way through.
I'd rather he stay with the number he has because he said he would. And I think a lot of kids bought his jerseys, and I think it would be cool to stick it out. But again, you know, you get one switch, in my opinion. Like, I think the guys who make the multiple jumps, like, that gets irritating. Like, for me, Harvey is, what is he, 19? That's your number now, kid. Like, you don't get to switch again and then become 7 and then 4. And what is he going to be, -3 by the time it's all done? If you want a new number, again, you can switch clubs, I guess. But I don't think you get more than one change. But as a fan, I don't think it matters. I think it does matter to the players, though. And I will say, like, we ask if it adds pressure. I didn't think there could be more pressure on Darwin Nunez. I think coming rebranded as the number 9 in year 2 might be more pressure that he didn't need. I think he could have run another year with 27, and we could have just left number 9 on the shelf for one more year. But, hey, they got to sell those jerseys and those new kits at the club store because we got to make money somehow.
Yeah, that's sometimes a marketing move too. Like, he is now, I know, like, they do a lot of like exchanges and stuff like that, but let's face it, I think most people just buy the new jersey with his number 9 and not mess with the old one and stuff like that. But so that brings us to the other conversation. When you mentioned about Trent getting the 8, when like Chris was talking about that, it is the captaincy. Actually, Alan is the one who messaged me earlier this week, like asking about it, and I thought it would be I agree with him that it's a good topic for discussion here. With Milner gone, so the captaincy basically worked where it was Hendo and Milner assigned by the powers that be, and then you had the players vote for the other ones, correct? And then now with Milner leaving, Bickler, does Van Dijk default to that second captain when Hendo is not there? And with our assumption that Hendo is not going to start as many times as he did in the past, is our team captain suddenly kind of become Van Dijk?
I mean, I think that was the established order of things. I will say I'm not super comfortable with that, considering the body language and the way that he communicated throughout the year with the entire team. So, but yeah, that was the established order of things. And like, I mean, that this is a team in transition from top to bottom. And so this is going to be a very interesting to see what happens there, who the real leaders are. To me, it's probably Allison. Like, to me, that's the dude that has the most leadership capability. I know you really want a field general out there, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. Like I said, it makes me uncomfortable. He's going to have to really like step up and sort of like reframe the way he looks at the game this year if he's going to be a really good leader and a captain. But I still think that Henderson is going to still bear the majority of that, even though he's probably not going to be starting as many matches. I still think he's got to.
Yeah, Chris said this morning as well, like Allison would have picked. Does the English or lack thereof a concern when it's a cap? I guess it really kind of depends on what you expect from your captain as well. But, you know, he's supposed to be the guy that kind of like deals with the ref and stuff. Not that it makes a huge impact, but they're the ones to communicate and all that kind of stuff. Does that kind of hurt Ali's chances, Gally, that he's not very fluent in the language?
Yes. I mean, easily, just as easy as it is to say, yes, you got to be able to deal with, you do have to communicate with your teammates. And I know he can communicate with the teammates, but you also have to communicate with the referees. And I think whenever it's your keeper, it always feels like it's like, we didn't know who to make the captain, so we made it the keeper. Like, you know, by all intents and purposes, Hugo Lloris has been the captain of Tottenham for a decade, but Harry Kane's the captain. He kind of calls the shots on the pitch. He makes all the plays. So I don't know. It always felt weird to me. I think it's best when it's a midfielder, honestly, when it's like a marauding midfielder. I think Henderson's in the perfect spot. And I think if Trent does move to the midfield, then it would naturally make sense to have it. But I just saw it come through with Chris Strain. I think Robertson is a person who has shown levels of leadership. He'll get in the ass of anyone on the team, including the best players or Van Dijk. He'll stand up for himself. He has the manager's respect, and he captains his country. And I think if you captain and you can take it seriously enough to captain Scotland to a World Cup or the knockout round of the Euros, I think you probably can do a job being the vice captain on Liverpool. But I've said it before, Van Dijk's numbers statistically, when he is wearing the armband, our team gives up like a quarter of a goal more. And he just doesn't ever look. The defense never looks as settled because I feel like he's trying to police everyone on the pitch instead of just policing his defense. So I'm not a fan of it being Van Dijk personally. I would like it to be someone in the midfield. Unfortunately, Fabinho's fallen off as much as he has. So you can't really give it to the guy that you think would be the anchor that would be there more often than not.
See, that's a good point with Van Dijk. But at the same time, like initially when I remember like initially seeing stats were like, when Van Dijk captains, he always wins. Like it was like the first 10 games or 12 games or whatever. And then afterwards, you think, Bickler, is it because kind of like Gally's saying Van Dijk has more issues to worry about and his focus kind of gets separated a bit? Or is it a byproduct that, you know, you don't have a Henderson out on the field or a Milner in midfield, so defense looks worse automatically? It doesn't matter if he was wearing the captain band or a hair band or whatever in the back.
I mean, I think it's probably I think yes, but I also think it's probably a combination of the statistics being skewed by the fact that he's just not the same player anymore. Do you know what I mean? So, like, I mean, we talk about the statistics of him wearing the armband in the first 10 starts with it or whatever. Probably when we were like in our prime 19-20 run, you know what I mean? Versus like if we're looking like at his last 10-15 starts, this is a team already on the decline. So I think it's a variety of things. I think it's a byproduct of him as a player, but I think, yeah, definitely not having Henderson out there, we see what that does to the movement in midfield. The ball doesn't rotate as quickly. Possession isn't recycled. The switches aren't as fast. Yeah, I mean, but that is, you know, now we're bleeding in outside of the captain conversation and we're bleeding into just a straight up midfield discussion of what do we do with that Jordan Henderson.
Yes, and so we'll get to that because I want to talk of somebody like the movements and transfer and stuff like that. But going back to Robertson, I don't watch a lot of Scotland games, so I have not seen him as a captain in action in Scotland. Is it? I don't know if you have, Gally, but I don't know if he's the same character that he is in Liverpool, or knowing the captain, he kind of like takes on a different role, because he is the king of shithousery as a Liverpool player, whereas as a captain, you got to kind of be able to control some of that, not to mention keep the nerves down when you have players like Nunez, and you're going to have other young players on the field that you're going to have to keep at a certain level and focused, so you can't do the shithouser that you would maybe normally do.
It's a good point. I mean, he's still got that Scottish red ass in him. I mean, I think he just always has a little bit of that in him. That's kind of how he does things. He doesn't appear to be that much more reserved. If anything, it's more reserved because he's defending the entire time and not marauding forward because it's Scotland. But he's, he isn't. I would agree with Chris. He's not as shithouse, but at the same time, if that's what you give up a little bit to captain a side like Liverpool, then I think you do that. And I think this, if Curtis Jones is going to get more minutes, there's going to be plenty of shithousery happening on the pitch. So there's still some guys that will give you some, there's still some guys out there.
I just don't know, I just didn't know if Robertson kind of like tones that down, knowing
all eyes are on him.
I think Robbo's got that Carragher thing. He's got the Carragher thing where he's just like, you can hear him. You know what I mean? Like as you're watching the game, you can hear him, and that's probably what they need out of the back. But it's like, I think he's just always going to be yapping, right?
I think it's something you see with Robertson is like yakking in a negative and positive way. Whereas, I don't know, maybe it's me, but when I see Van Dijk barking, it's usually barking negative. And we've seen Hendo, we've heard Hendo, especially during COVID where there were no fans. You could freaking just hear Hendo all game long. And you saw that it was negative when it needed to be positive. I think he's like the ideal captain out there. And do you think that kind of makes a difference between Robertson and Van Dijk? But is it also weird, Gally, to bump Robertson over Van Dijk when he was kind of like in the ranking?
I do, except for the fact to what you put earlier, which is I'm pretty sure that the third one came down to a player's vote, and they voted for Van Dijk. And ultimately, that's what Klopp gets paid for, right? He's paid to make the right decisions. And I honestly think, I don't want to go back to the Bellingham thing, but let's be real. We all thought Bellingham was coming, and they thought they were buying Bellingham to put that fucking number 8 on him and have him be Henderson's vice captain for a couple of years and then eventually become the captain for the next decade. Like, they were buying a leader. They were buying a guy who captained Dortmund. I think they have to actually seriously consider that in the transfer market, because we haven't been exactly linked to a whole bunch of English talent, right? And if we're going to bring a guy in and make him captain of this club, most likely he's going to speak the language and be from England and understand Liverpool's club and the history. They're not going to bring a guy like McAllister or one of these young midfielders in. So I think in the coming years, they probably have to think about it, especially when your entire front line is all foreign attacking players who don't speak English.
And, it's not like they have to write an essay in English, but you do have to be able to, communicate with the ref and stuff like that. And I think most of them are capable.
Interviews.
I know, Ali is very awkward talking. I mean, we all knew, obviously Bobby was. So a couple of names that are thrown out there, Bickler, let me run it by you, because there was one. I remember the drama where Trent came out as captain, and I guess Mo wanted it. And those are actually the two names that are thrown in the comments. Where do you stand with, because obviously you still will need. Who is our fourth captain right now? Because in the past, it was Hendo, Milner, and the player chosen ones were Van Dijk and Gini, right? Who replaced Gini?
I think it was Robertson, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
I could be wrong.
Never came to that, so we never got to see it. But anywho, Mo and Trent, what is your take in those guys going up the rank?
I mean, they both interview well. I think Mo's probably got the clout, but I think I'd probably go Trent over Mo if I had to. Mo just tends to be a little bit too quiet, and I don't see him as somebody who has the ability to motivate on the pitch. And I honestly don't see enough of that out of Trent either. And that's not to say,
I'd agree.
But Trent has the ceiling to grow into that. Where Mo is like, you know, he's in his 30s. You're not going to get much more out of that with Mo, and like he's probably going to move in a season or two. So I think you've got room to grow with Trent. If I had to pick one, he'd probably be the fourth.
So Mo is stated by the refs, as Chris, and that's a good point too, because you want somebody who's going to be respected by the refs. Do we care? Not a lot, but we should, because ultimately these guys are human and they do shit for spite sometimes. Hence, Mo doesn't get calls. Does that play into your equation? Like a guy like Trent, for example, Gally, is probably more seen likable than, for example, Mo.
Absolutely. I think honestly it comes down to the bias of the foreign players. Honestly, in the Premier League, I don't know that they're
foreigners get the heck all the time.
You do. No, but I do think that's part of it, though. I think when you look around the league and you look at, you know, the way referees treat the English players that they've known for years, some of them they've watched come up through the ranks, come up through the systems. You know, they're in. This is a incestual little world of football, right? Like between referees and fourth officials and timekeepers. These guys have been doing this their whole lives. And I think you see it. And I think there's a reason most teams have an English-speaking Englishman as their captain when you go up and down the league. And even at times, you know, it might be Kevin De Bruyne wearing the armband, but John Stones spends all match talking to Anthony Taylor. Because Anthony Taylor's known John Stones since he was 11 years old. And he has a relationship to get a point across that. You see Mo running back and advocating for a foul against someone, or to have a card get brandished, a red card, or the things Henderson does or gets under the refs to maybe earn the next call. I hate that, because that just means bad officiating, but it's real, right? We know it's real. So, and I think Henderson does that. I think Milner does that. Trent probably could learn to do that. I don't know that even Van Dijk does that very well. Like when I think about it, every time he talks to a ref, they look like they just glaze and glare at him. And the one half, they're like, man, this is a good looking man. And the other half, they're like, this son of a bitch just whines all the time and never made a mistake in his life.
And that's the thing with captaincy. I think it's subjective as well. I mean, you know, throughout the years as I played, I've had really good captains, really shitty ones. Then I was a captain. They're probably referring to me as a shitty one or a good one or whatever. It's going to be subjective, because I think, Bickler, it really depends on what you want from your captain. Do you want him to lead by example, or do you want him to like actually fight for you, or do you want, you know, like somebody silent and composed that calms everybody around them?
I mean, I think you can be both. I think that's what makes Henderson's great. I mean, Henderson has the ability to be a calming effect. He also has the ability to get after it. You know what I mean? Like if he needs to. And I think that, like, I think that's what you really want. I think, you know, I think something that gets overlooked. I think your captain has to be, like, not just from a team standpoint, but from an overall standpoint. I think there's a likability factor that they have to have. Like, I really do. And like, I think like,
you mean by rest of the team or like outside?
No, just like overall.
Okay. Just
the whole picture. Like, you know, you can't have like anybody named Silva as a captain by default. You know, like I think that's what makes KDB a poor captain, to be quite honest. As talented as he is, I think he's just a whiny asshole. And I think most everybody picks up on that. And so I think that, like, you know, respect is earned. Yeah. But I think there's this, like, you know, not every captain can be a Gerrard who like physically takes your team over the line. And I think that's what we learned as supporters with Henderson is like I will say, I personally think Henderson's a better captain than Steven Gerrard, like from a captain standpoint, because I think there's more to leadership than just being able to bang the ball in the net or to single-handedly win a game on skill. Like it takes the ability to sort of organize and orchestrate on the pitch in a way that not only gets your team to function the way that it's supposed to, but it gets the match official to roll things the way that you need them to roll.
And I think this just kind of like shows Hendo's value, and he's very like underappreciated, and like how much of a great captain he is. Because Gally, we're struggling to find somebody who can give all these traits that he's doing, because one guy has only one of them but doesn't have the other. We talk about another guy, he has two of them but doesn't have the other two and stuff like that. I think if nothing else, this conversation should show everybody how actually valuable and important Hendo has been over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, along with all the sideways passes. And I'm just kidding. I love Henderson, but God, people, get over yourselves. There's more to this game than just, Thiago through balls and little loopers over the top that come off 1 out of 15 times. I say it all the time. Even last season, which wasn't his best by any means, every point that we had things cooking and going well was when Jordan Henderson was in the lineup and playing well. At every point last year where it felt like things were really going well, Henderson was a big contribution to it. Still to this day. Now, is that maybe an indictment on the midfield's makeup as a whole, that you still have to rely on the 33-year-old or 32, soon to be 33-year-old? That's my only fear and I agree with both of you. I think he is the better captain of the two of them. And I don't even know that that's almost even that much of a debate anymore, because what he's actually dealt with during his time here and the turnovers and the winning and the demands on them. And let's be real, like, as great as the Premier League was under, with United at the top, they were never competing with anything like this team's trying to compete with City. And Henderson has been the guy to keep them up every single match, and with less rotation than any other club, because 1, the manager doesn't rotate, and 2, we have a smaller squad. It's a feat in itself. And I think that he's going to go down as one of the most underappreciated Liverpool greats of all time, because that's what he is. He's a Liverpool legend, even if 60% of the fan base likes to shit on him more than they support him.
And I think that's why this is probably very debatable to most, because I think, people look at what's on the field skill wise, like you were saying, Bickler, and B, because he followed Stevie, there's an automatic, you can't live up to that thing going. So Henderson's replacements is going to be very, very difficult to find. I don't know if McAllister is not the same type, is going to bring that. And more than likely, as we enter this transfer chat now, Bickler, I mean, obviously the young kids you bring, will they be able to bring that energy at least? If you look at a player like Thuram, if you look like Kone, they're not going to bring obviously the leadership qualities with their age and experience and stuff. But do you think they'll be able to bring on-field stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think those players are all a little bit different. I think, honestly, I do think McAllister is probably the one that has the most similar characteristics to Henderson, to be quite honest. I don't see it with Thuram. Kone, maybe a little bit, but I think that McAllister has a better all-around game and is probably a little bit closer to, like, being able to do the things like recycle possession that Henderson does. I think they got a similar pacing in terms of the way they play. But look, nobody's going to step in and just replace Henderson in terms of what he does, not from a leadership standpoint, but as just a footballing standpoint. It's going to be very difficult to find a player like that. And, we talked about this with Jurgen Klopp, we have a set system, right? And he's married to a set system with set players. And it feels like we're trying to find set players to replace into the set system. And it's very, very difficult to do both. You have to adjust. If you want to keep the system, that's fine, but you adjust the players. You can't just find like-for-like replacements most of the time. Now, it looks like we got really, really lucky with Gakpo, right? I mean, we have one of those situations where he almost got like a bigger version of Bobby. Now, I don't think he has the vision that Bobby has, right? Like the creativity and the vision, but like a lot of what Bobby brings that we thought we might not ever see again, he does bring. So we do have the ability to catch lightning in a bottle with transfers sometimes, Diaz came in and basically drug us over the line in a different way than Mane, right? But basically caught off on that left side, plays wider than Mane likes to play. But we're going to have to find new ways to do this in the same system, or we're going to have to tweak the system. And it's just I think we're all sitting here as supporters and we don't know which one's going to happen.
And I think that's part of the frustration probably. So let's talk about that, Gally. How frustrated are you, if at all, which I'm sure you're frustrated. How frustrated are you on a level of 0 being, I'm easy. I don't care at all. To 10 being like Gally seeing a kid asking for a jersey, kind of
Ooh,
frustrated.
it's not that crazy.
So 0 to 10, where are you at in terms of lack of finalized activity?
All right. I'm a 5, and that's because the window's not open yet. It's not even open. The international window isn't open until July 1st. So, yes, they can make moves and you can sign players domestically when you're buying them from English clubs. But I never thought we were going to buy a lot of players. I'm happy that McAllister, it looks to me like McAllister was a guy they earmarked all season long, were watching, paid attention to, saw him at the World Cup, knew about his release clause, pounced, got the deal done, and he's in and he's starting against Chelsea. I'm convinced McAllister will be in the starting lineup against Chelsea on opening day, which we know is a huge accomplishment on a Jurgen Klopp side, right? So I have to be happy there. Would I like there to have been a second signing to almost show that they had the second piece in play? Yes. And when I'm seeing some of the actions happening by our main competition in this league and what they're targeting, I've never been the full FSG out crowd. You guys know that, right? I've never banged oil money, and I don't want oil money. I am starting, though, to teeter towards is this sustainable, and can we compete if these are the constraints? Because Paul and I sat here for 2 years and said there's money for the right guys.
Yeah.
And either the right guys just really don't like us, or we don't think some of these guys are right enough to stump up 50, 60 million. And like the kid going to Newcastle from AC Milan, he's the right guy for Liverpool's midfield right now. And if they can get him for 50, 60 million, we should be getting him for 50, 60 million. I know we're not in Champions League, but we're goddamn Liverpool and it's a year away. So I am getting a little and I went from a 5 to a 7.
Was that 5?
Now you sound like a 7.
No, I just talked myself from a 5 to a 7, and before you know it, I'm going to be holding up a sign saying I would like John Henry's wife's T-shirt. No, I didn't. All right, maybe I do.
That's all you there. I'm gonna let that float around.
You gotta see it.
You went from a 7, and I think that was even like you can probably round that off to 8. Victor, where are you at?
I'm at an 8, and I feel like a dude that's putting on the boxing tape on his hands, like getting ready to go to a 9, because like I'm so and really this came off the back of last summer, right? Like we went after, swung and missed on Tchouaméni, and then basically said, oh well, we're good because we're gonna get Bellingham next summer. Guess what? You fucking didn't. Like so, like I'm at an 8 because like we put our eggs in a basket. And made a lot of promises and puffed our chest out and fucking missed. And like now, like we're sitting in a situation where you fucking lost Champions League because you didn't want to address an issue last summer because you thought you had a sure thing this summer. So you know, like I'm just frustrated in general. I'm also frustrated because of my frustration. I've disconnected from most of like my like watching transfer stuff, and then I'm doing my due diligence to get on our awesome Discord channel and check in with people, and my transfer news is coming from Kazi and Alex. So now I'm at like an 8.5, rearing at a 9.
That's your problem right there, yeah.
Yeah. So like
well, first of all, if Alex is giving you transfer news, it basically should come with a disclaimer that says, like, brought to you by Legos. We like to waffle. Because one day we're signing this guy, and the next day we're signing another guy, and then this day I want this guy, and the next day that guy's.
No, it's a combination. It's like this weird, sick combination of FSG out and predictions that I can't fucking get out of. Like, I can't get out of the way. And so, like, I just. You know, we keep seeing news about the same 8 guys, and it's like, oh, we're in for such and so, and then like, oh, Liverpool's cooled on such and so, and it's like, you know, it's just we've done this, and this was going to come to a head, right? Like Guy and I have been saying the same thing for like 2 summers about how it's not a funding thing, how we're waiting for the moment, and like to me, it feels like we waited and missed the moment, and now it's like, all right, now what? And like to me, it's nice to get McAllister, right? But like there are so many great midfield options out there. Like, and I just I don't feel like we're any closer to getting any of them done than we were a month and a half ago. And that's the frustrating part. And I know we're waiting for U21s to wrap up, and I know the window hasn't opened yet. So I'm still going to wait. But like, I think I'm at an 8 moving into a 9 because I've been waiting for 3 fucking years.
But we also haven't moved a player out. How is no one left? How has there not been a sale?
And we're talking about how we're going to let Thiago just wind his contract down.
Yeah, I mean, literally, is there not? Do the Saudis hate us? Maybe. Is there not some dirty oil blood money coming?
If they're watching this and you're over here saying, I don't want oil money, of course they hate us.
Well, I want their oil money. I don't want oil money to own the club. I am fine with oil money being invested in the club on a overinflated transfer fee for a player that I feel will probably play in 40% of the matches next year. Like, if there was ever a player in line for a $70 million move to the Saudi league, isn't it Thiago? The play is gonna. It's like basically watching him is like a guy playing in the desert. He barely moves around on the pitch.
25, honestly.
Dude, he will be like rolling around his ankles, doing all kinds of moves and stuff. The Saudis will love
giving those crazy eyes to the refs. They would love it. They would love his 2-footed forward tackles. They go over well.
So, okay, let me calm you guys down. Let me walk you guys off the edge over here. Chris says he's a 3. I'm about like a 4. And I'll be honest, my 4 is more kind of like what Bickler's saying, more on like the built-in frustration of not addressing it earlier. I think that all the rumors and seeing from other teams, to me, is increasing all these numbers unnecessarily. You guys should chill. I really think I would be worried, and we'll all be here at like 7, 8, 9, 10, blowing up the screen if, come first week of July, that window opens and we don't close these deals that are supposedly being talked about. And there's another thing, we've had that Chris mentions in the comments about like Fabinho and stuff like that. Normally we do the business quiet, and anytime we've had way too much info about somebody, somehow it has never happened. I can't remember a lot of players that was talked about month after month after month. Van Dijk, I guess, is an exception, but most of these guys we just like bring in. It just suddenly shows up. Next thing you know, they signed it. I think I would go up in my frustration when we come to that level and the first week of July comes by and there is still nothing. Because we all know just by, how we arrange the offseason and stuff like that, that Klopp wants this squad intact going in to the training camp. So, I mean, in terms of your ratio then, Gally, is it just seeing, you think, about, watching these other teams potentially like verbally agreeing on terms and stuff like that? Or is it just the fact that there's so many rumors out there that we just want some kind of closure?
Well, I think we have a real concern because we don't have a squad. We didn't have a squad deep enough to make Champions League.
Yeah.
And we haven't gotten any better. And 3 of the 4 teams ahead of us have. So, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Arsenal, if they sign Declan Rice and Kai Havertz, they get a lot better. A lot better.
They're deeper for one, which is what they lacked. So.
Yeah, they get stronger. I mean, I think whoever gets Declan Rice, honestly, is signing. Like, I think Rice, if he goes to City, makes them ridiculous. Like, they're like, oh, Gundogan's leaving. It's going to suck for us. That guy was so good. And then literally they sign Rice. Him and Rodri are lining up together in the midfield with KDB in front of them. And it's really, I mean, it's daunting and it's just disgusts me. But I think if he goes to Arsenal, him, Odegaard, and Havertz, and I think they can build something pretty strong in their midfield. So these are big moves. Newcastle making some smart, nice decisions to build their team. We don't know what United's doing because they're in limbo like us.
Yeah.
But I do think that, in Chelsea's Chelsea, they're just buying a whole new FIFA team and selling everybody to Saudi. Like, literally, like next year, it's like brought to you by Chelsea Football Club.
It is like an 8-year-old playing Football Manager. Yeah.
But I do think, I also think it's Brighton, being linked today with being close to signing Kudus from Ajax. Like, if Brighton bring that kid in, and they've already brought in João Pedro from Watford, like, these other clubs are making pretty shrewd signings right now. I mean, Aston Villa being linked to João Felix, and it's like serious rumors that he might go there. Like, there's real moves happening, and I feel like we're kind of just on the outside signing $35 million World Cup winners because they had a weird clause that said they would go cheap to Europa League teams, and we knew about it, so we scooped them up. Like, would we have signed McAllister if we had made Champions League and it would have cost us 70?
Yes,
probably not, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, who knows? It's weird. Just feels weird.
How about you, Bickler? That 8, 9, 9.5 you got going over there, how much is based off of like the previous frustration I mentioned that gives me my 4? Is your other 5 coming from like so many rumors floating around and seeing others not officially?
It's like a 50-50 split of like previous windows combined with my present anxiety and the fact that our transfer business hasn't felt the same since Edwards left.
Correct.
And I think Ward did a fine job, but I think what Ward didn't have that Edwards had was an established relationship with Jurgen Klopp. Because I think that Edwards could step in and sort of handicap Jurgen and be like, look, Jurgen, this is like, I know you don't want to make this move, but we have to make this move, and this is why. And like, I don't know that Ward had the ability to do that. I think Ward kind of got overrun by Klopp sometimes. And I think Klopp sort of like slapped his hands away on some deals that probably should have happened. I mean, we pretty much know that.
New dude does?
Look, they have an established relationship, right? They know each other, and Jurgen wanted him. So I'm a little bit concerned that Jurgen wanted him because Jurgen's not going to want somebody that is going to like challenge him. But what I know of this dude and the way he did business in the Bundesliga is that he is a bit of a like an abrasive personality. So like, I don't know. We'll see. That whole thing makes me nervous because Jörg doesn't have much experience out of the Bundesliga. Like, that's my worry. Yeah. Like, and his previous experiences building clubs that are in very, very scant and difficult, like financial.
Yeah.
And we're not look, people make the joke that we are, but we're not. And we shouldn't be. And that's not how we should be approaching this transfer window. And that's what makes me worried is we should not be approaching this window as a team that's like trying to squeeze penny on the dollar. Like, we should be approaching this as a team that's like going to make massive moves that we're going to need to pay off in the long run, but with the immediate gain of getting back into Champions League. And so that's where like most of my anxiety comes in.
And I think, I mean, like I say, the built-in one is probably the biggest one. You look at the like last year, and you look at, you know, the players we brought in last summer. 2 of them you're already loaning out. Nunez, we're going to see if like the formation change and stuff makes that a good move going forward. You brought in Gakpo midseason, that has been golden, but it's kind of like, translate to American sports, like when you look at your draft class and you're like, holy shit, we didn't keep anybody kind of thing, lost the whole offseason kind of a deal. And I think, yeah, I get that built-in frustration that comes from that. Having said that, Gally, I mean, the new guy, I'm assuming, is going to be kind of like what Bickler is saying. I mean, even the moment his name got announced, I figured he would find us a couple of gems in Bundesliga that probably none of us heard of, or, oh yeah, I remember seeing him kind of a thing, and it would be like a $5-10 million guy. I don't think his specialty is not really going after and bringing big names. You think his past experience kind of like stops that from happening? Are we just looking at smaller signings because of just looking at the guy we brought in to do those signings?
No, I mean, I think we're looking at smaller signings because I think we're trying to sign 4 players this window for $125 million. Because I don't think we actually had $250 million to spend, and I don't think, and I keep banging on this drum because we don't sell players at all. We let players run down contracts, and we lose players on a free, and then we just overspend and sign players. But like, even that case, then get out there and sign some of these players that were available on a free. You could have brought in Ndekya and gotten a left-footed center back that was supposedly offered to Liverpool out of the Bundesliga that everyone seemed to love and now is at AS Roma, and he just signed a new deal, a 5-year deal, and he was a free transfer. So they could have had a player and not had to put up a transfer fee, but they weren't interested in the player. So maybe, they end up with the Mickey Van de Ven. Maybe they don't, because now it sounds like Tottenham's really hot on him, and the kid knows he's 21 and wants to play, and he's afraid he's going to sit at Liverpool. So he's thinking about taking the Tottenham deal instead. So, like, this is the other problem. I feel like we have been linked to these people, and the longer you wait, Like, how many times have we heard, like, once you get linked to someone, then other clubs start they start paying attention. It sounds stupid, but, like,
That's why I don't know how believable these links are. I mean, these are not, we're not saying, hey, we're looking at him. Some dude is saying we're looking at him. So are we just kind of, I mean, obviously we're not looking at all 15 guys. Are we just kind of getting caught up in the rumorville, which is more active than normal because we know we need a lot of players. Like, we didn't have this as much in the past seasons because we didn't have a huge need on paper. Now everybody knows there's a huge need.
We're probably caught up in the rumor mill, but at the same time, like, there's a difference from, unnamed source in, the Daily Mail and Christian Falk reporting in Bild in Germany that we're seriously in talks with Wolfsburg about trying to get the guy. I mean, when named reporters who actually do this for a living and are tied to these clubs start to make these connections, like, I hate to give Kazi credit, but, like, he's right about the fact that when Ornstein says something, about 48 hours later, it becomes a story because he doesn't usually say things because they don't like to be proven wrong. Like, there are certain writers, I think, that are a little bit more credible. This isn't Fabrizio Romano basically retweeting someone else's thing and then saying, we're almost to here we go. Like, we get to here we go when the club announces it, you ass. But, I mean, I think some of these reports in Germany, I think there have been some teeth to them, in my opinion, between Kone and Van de Veen. I think we are looking at those players.
And we've signed players that we've talked about for ages. Like, I mean, they haven't all been like Fabinho signings that came out of nowhere. Thiago, we talked about forever. Darwin, we talked about forever. So, I mean, like, we have signed these dudes.
I mean, it wasn't that long.
Yeah,
Gakpo, Diaz, these kind of like, it came up and then it's happened pretty fast.
Klopp made a comment about after we played, the first time we played Darwin, Klopp made a comment and we were linked immediately after that comment all the way till we signed him.
Like Taki. Klopp only scouts the guys who are playing against us. So
he's a big fan. He's a big fan, yeah.
In Europe or something.
He's a big fan of the it's that warm-up stare that he does. Everyone thinks he's just trying to, like, make him uncomfortable.
That's a transfer policy.
Yeah, he's basically checking out which players he's willing to bid on, but only if he can argue with the guy who's running it and get them for like 15 cents on the dollar. Because that's my whole problem. And I don't understand why, and I agree with Paul. I do think there was some friction with Ward, and that's why he's like, you know what? This is a great job, but it ain't worth it for 3 more years with this guy. I don't want to do this for another 3 years. Because we've all said this before, right? Klopp is great when he's your manager, and he's your ham, and he's your personality.
And you're winning.
And he's great when you're winning. But he doesn't actually, anyone who thinks he is really that jovial and really that let's sit down and have a beer, he is every bit as maniacal as Pep shows he is all match long. Pep just can't hide it for even the 90 minutes or a press conference because he's so focused on what he does, and they're different in that way. So I think working with Jurgen Klopp is probably not the easiest thing in the world, as seen by multiple assistant coaches, as seen by his changes. And the other thing is, we all poke fun at Pep Linders in his book last year. There's been a real philosophical change to the tactics that we employ and the way that we do training sessions over the last couple of years since Pep has gotten more control over the day-to-day operations of the club. And I don't know that it's all for the better. And I think in some ways it may have led to some of the injuries at times. And I think on a lot of fronts, I think it's led to Klopp almost getting tighter with his coaching staff and feeling they need more control. And I'll tell you, as a Red Sox fan, the one thing the FSG people hate more than anything is when on-field player personnel people start trying to make business decisions about the sports part of it. They really, really hate that shit. They like signing. They have a market. They have a model, and there has to be a give and take. And I think Klopp's gotten maybe a little too much power. I'm not going to lie. And I think it's why we're seeing inactivity.
Why bring in a sporting director that he's tight with?
Because they needed someone by name so he doesn't get blamed.
What do you mean? So they can blame the sporting director?
Correct. Will anyone ever blame Klopp? He's never been blamed by any Liverpool supporter at this point for anything.
No, I'm not talking for fans. I'm talking for FSG. If they didn't want to,
here's my thing. If I'm FSG,
bring a guy that he is.
I think it's someone to buffer it.
Yeah, if I'm FSG, I need to, we have a situation where I need to put Jurgen in the pen and get him to understand we need to move in this direction and this is why. The person that I'm going to have as my buffer has got to be his guy. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Because Jurgen will be
so he kind of has,
you know what I mean?
Trusts with him.
Right.
Yeah.
And Edwards was there before him. So there wasn't picking Edwards. Edwards was already there being successful.
And that's kind of worrying, to be honest with you, in the long run scheme of things. And that when this dude was announced, I guess that was my biggest concern was, one, his experiences more after going, finding diamonds in the rough. And two, I would rather have somebody independent to come in and say, hey man, I know you want to run out this contract, but we got to get 15-20 from this guy if you want this other young guy from here and stuff like that. And I just don't know if we're going to get that from this sporting director at all. I guess we'll find out and see. But based on what you guys are seeing, I had Napoli on hold. I should tell him that we're not interested in Osimhen anymore. Is that what I'm hearing, Gally?
Is that maybe the craziest fucking thing? And it's everywhere that they're meeting this week. I thought to myself, I was like, if they were to go out right now and spend 160 million,
it's gotta involve Darwin.
It would have to be, yeah. Even if it did involve Darwin, at that point, don't you just say to yourself then, well, then Bellingham really didn't want to come because it really wasn't about money because we had the money. And if you are going to spend 160 on him, then why don't you just meet the crazy ass UEFA report today and just give the 250 for Mbappe and sell your soul to the devil? I mean, you might as well sell the club to fucking the Saudi league if you're going to bring Mbappe in.
I think the difference with Bellingham is it's so say we had we can't say it wasn't about the money for us because I don't think it was about the initial transfer fee. I think it's about what happens to your club when you put a 19-year-old on Mo Salah wages.
Correct.
We've seen that story, right? It happened at Arsenal with your boy Ozil. You put yourself in a super precarious position immediately when you do that.
Yeah, I was just using it as an example. It's a crazy non-starter, right? It doesn't make any sense. And let's be honest, I think he's the best striker in the world. Pound for pound, right now at this age, I'd sign him over any other striker in the world, and that includes Haaland, because I think he's actually an all-around footballer.
He's definitely more versatile, yes.
But he's not a center forward. He's an out-and-out striker. He is a true, and we don't play with a striker. We bought one last summer and couldn't turn him into our center forward. So this is
we fought him and found out he was a left winger.
Can we just
all frontline players?
Nunez found out he's a left winger.
What drives me nuts about this is we talked about him earlier, and I know he divides, sentiment. I think Timuchin, I think you've talked about him being a player Declan Rice is the actual player that we need. We talked about earlier, we need someone to walk in for Henderson, play on the right side of a mid, could play a 6, could play in an 8, can create, can play in a double pivot, would be your captain for a decade, would walk in, would own that number 8, would not be afraid to put it on his back and go out and play. And he wouldn't try to be Steven Gerrard. He'd be Declan Rice, which is a good enough version. Yeah. And I honestly, we don't have 100 million, because if we did, then that's what you go sign. I mean, right now.
That's why I don't understand why we don't take 35-40 and go get James Ward-Prowse.
Well, and again, there's another player.
Patience.
And I know you get the links to Lavia. The Rice one drives me nuts because, he's there, he's available. You know what you'd get. He has the talent, he has the whole package, and there's a reason Bayern was in on him. They got out because they were we know he's staying in England, so we're not going to bother with this any further. But Bayern wanted to make him their marquee signing of the rebuild of the Bayern Munich midfield and empire. They thought that highly of him. I think he's way undervalued. We all know in our little world, in our Discord world, why he's hated. A man who once played for Ireland cannot now play for England and then still call himself Irish, right? That's why he's hated in our worlds. But he's he's just an immense talent. And for me, it's a no-brainer. Right now, we should be in. We should be the one trying to hijack this, not City. There's a reason City want him.
Here's my prediction right here. And I think, I've always been big on the Declan Rice move because to me, he's a young Hendo on the pitch, at least, what we were talking about earlier. I don't know if he's going to be as vocal as a captain and stuff like that. He would be a good captain. I just don't know if he'll be as vocal, but I think on the pitch, definitely gives you everything that you can get out of Hendo in terms of like the pressing, the running, the passing, movements, and definitely like control, if nothing else. But I will make the prediction right now that we will be stealing one of these deals in the last seconds, similar to the whole Gakpo ordeal and stuff like that. I feel like one of these players that we're kind of like reading the rumors about being linked and stuff like that, because none of this shit is official. I feel like there is a surprise in there somewhere that we will swoop in and sign one of these guys. See? Are we happy now with this prediction?
Here goes James Ward-Prowse just for Chris and Alan.
I was gonna say we're probably gonna swoop in and we're gonna like steal the option of sending Reece Williams on loan. And it's going to be like he was going to Aberdeen, but we're sending him to Preston, and we got an extra 100,000 quid. Can you believe it? Oh, and by the way, we signed another player from Southampton. It's not Lavia. It's not James Ward-Prowse. It's a 19-year-old backup keeper.
No,
hey,
there's no way.
But really, that dude's legit, though.
No, I'm just kidding.
We'll all get to 8s, 9s, and 10s probably in a couple of weeks over here, but I really feel like we will not be. I have kind of like faith, but we shall find out. Hopefully by next Monday, it will be official then. We can sign people on July 2nd, right? It ends up being the 2nd. Do I have that right on the calendar? It ends up being the 3rd of July. So we will be talking about all those signings that happened then, and I'm going to be telling you guys, see, I told you guys. If not, I'll be up there 7 and 8 with you guys as well.
Talking about McAllister.
We're talking about McAllister and how many positions he can play. But until then, take care. We will see you guys next Monday and talk about all the transfer moves by then. Have a great week.